Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. I am so excited to get us started with From First Gift to Lifelong Supporter. We're going to be diving deep into donor journeys. So my name is Candace. I will be your host for today's webinar. And we have Matt Bitzegaio from DonorDock here, and I'm going to turn it over to him in just a moment. So until then, I want to get everyone settled. I hope you grab some coffee or a tea if you're more of a tea person. And I want to get us started today. So in the chat, let me know, where are you from? Love to see where everyone's from. I'm in Queens, I'm in New York. Yeah, excited to see you all here today. We have Kelly from Fort Worth, Texas. Matt's in North Dakota. So thanks for joining us, Matt. Can't wait to turn it over to you. We have New Hampshire, North Carolina, wow, California, Illinois, another New Yorker, just a little more upstate, Colorado, Oregon. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I wanted to see, I have a little surprise. Is anyone in the Minneapolis or greater area? Is that anyone over there? We do have an upcoming in-person event in Minneapolis called the Minneapolis Nonprofit Club. So I'll drop the link in the chat if anyone would love to check it out. We would love to see you there. And just wanted to let everyone here know that today's webinar is hosted by Community Boost. We are a digital marketing agency empowering nonprofits to grow their communities online. So we help organizations really build up their supporter base by creating a lot of new opportunities to get in front of new audiences and audiences old and new altogether. So super excited. If anyone is interested in learning more about Community Boost, feel free to, I'll put the link in the chat, communityboost.org, and I would love to get you connected with the team. But I just want to let everyone know that today's webinar is going to be recorded. So don't worry if you miss something, you'll get the recording tomorrow in your inbox. As we go through the webinar today, I'll gather any links to resources and action items for you, and I'll put it all together in an email. I'll send it out with Matt's permission. I can also send out the PDF of the slideshow that we're going to be going through, and that will, again, be in your inbox tomorrow. So I'm really excited to have you here, excited to have you engage with us. So feel free, any questions that you have throughout today's webinar, put them in the Q&A pane, because we will be having time for questions at the end. Renee asked if a recording will be sent out after the webinar. Yes, it'll be in your inbox tomorrow. So feel free to go ahead and review it then, share it with the team. I'm so excited to introduce Matt Bitzegaio. He is the founder and CEO at DonorDock. For 22 years, Matt has shaped CRMs for the for-profit sector before founding DonorDock to fill the need for a simple, action-focused CRM that helps fundraisers know what to do next. Matt holds a deep-seated passion for working with nonprofit organizations and believes strongly that technology should further enable their mission and drive more impact. He and his family reside in West Fargo, North Dakota. Matt, thank you so much for being here, and I will pull you up to the stage.
Thanks, Candace. I appreciate the introduction. And just want to say a deep welcome to everyone for joining us today, taking time out of your day. Super excited to talk with you today about something that I think is a really important topic, and that's the journeys that we kind of work to bring our donors through and the experience that we try and create to them. So that's what we're going to do today, is really dive deep into donor journeys. We've had DonorDock in the market for about 8 years now. We've worked with thousands of nonprofits around the country, and we continually hear this kind of same set of challenges over and over again. So number one, the should list keeps growing. So we all have that list of things every day that we feel like we should do this, we should do that. But it's really hard sometimes to translate that should list into meaningful action. So we hear that a lot. We hear the challenges around managing disconnected tools and data. There's this kind of universal truth that all of our customers have limited budget, time, and resources. And so all of those challenges kind of lead to a situation in which sometimes the experience that we're able to provide to our donors doesn't really match the expectations that they have as donors. They want to feel appreciated, they want to feel connected to your organization and to the impact that their donation is helping to drive. And so we've heard these challenges over and over again. And really, that led us to building what we call the Smart Steward method, which is really a methodology. It's an iterative methodology for how to kind of use your CRM, your technology to increase your productivity, to help drive confidence. We want you to be able to go home every day knowing that you got the most important things done today, and start to help align the experience that we provide to the expectations that our donors have. And so we've been working on this Smart Steward method for a while. And as part of that, one of the things that's really come into focus for us is that we live in this world today where it's all just always about just getting more done, like checking more things off. And we've had this strong realization that it actually isn't always about just doing more. It's about helping our customers focus on what matters most every single day. And we are strong believers that engaging with your donors in a meaningful and consistent way are some of the most important things that you can do every day. And so part of our Smart Steward method is really around donor journeys. And journeys, when I talk about donor journeys, what I'm really talking about are intentional step by step experiences that an individual has with your organization. And that really starts from the first time they become aware of you and your mission, that initial gift, and really through their entire life cycle, ultimately trying to build that long term loyalty, that long term advocacy. And when we think about these journeys, some of the things that we have that are goals with the journeys, number one is just consistency. I think that we see often that donor engagement is not always a consistent thing that is happening. Donors may hear from you right after they give a gift, and they may not hear from you again outside of maybe like a bulk newsletter or something along those lines again until it's time when you need to ask for another gift. And so, one of our goals with Journeys is to create consistency in these personalized touch points, because that's going to help build trust and gain momentum. We want these predictable, well-timed journeys to help these supporters feel seen. We talked about, aligning the expectation with the experience. We want them to feel seen, appreciated, and confident that their gifts matter to your organization. We also see that these predefined journeys actually can really help your staff know exactly when to automate versus when the time is right for personal connection. We're going to talk about that quite a bit today. And then there's repeatability. When we follow a defined, consistent process, we can measure it, we can improve it, and really we can create repeatable outcomes, which is one of the primary goals that I see with defining and executing on these journeys. So that's really what we're going to dig into today. We're going to talk today specifically about 6 key stewardship journeys that we think are kind of the lowest common denominator of what we need to be doing. Now, you may have other thoughts and other journeys that you could think of. I hear a lot things like volunteer journeys. These are great, but we want to focus on these 6 key journeys today, because we think this is the baseline that you should be doing to really steward a donor through their life cycle with your organization. So the first journey we're going to talk about is the prospect journey. And I'll explain what that is. We'll talk about the steps that we think are important. Then it's that first time donor journey when they become a giver to your organization. Then the recurring donor journey, if they become a recurring donor. The mid-level donor journey, which we'll talk a little bit more about what does that really mean, and how do we define that. and then the major donor journey. And then one that I think gets overlooked a lot is the lapse donor journey. So there's a reality that we may at some point have donors who become lapse donors. It's not a may, we will. And what do we do when that happens? And how do we try and actively re engage those donors? And so those are the six kind of key stewardship journeys that we plan to talk about today and to go deep on. Again, there may be others that you would want to think about, and I think that's awesome. But I want to make sure that we get through these six so that we can have that baseline. And so, where we're going to start, the first thing I always like to talk about is something at DonorDock that we call the human equation. Because when we're talking about journeys, there might be this thought process that we are talking about just automating every step of this journey. And I think that becomes a really can be something that's fraught with peril if we try and take that approach. And so we came up with this concept called the human equation, where automation and even like AI tools, things that we have available to us today, they can be such a powerful exponent in helping us scale human equations. There's something out there called Dunbar's law. It was a something kind of posited by Robin Dunbar, who was a British psychologist. The idea that human beings can really only manage about 150 meaningful relationships at any given time. And so we all have a certain number of relationships in our life, whether that's our friends, our family, that take up some of those 150 slots. And then if you're a fundraiser and you have a relationship list of 300 donors or even 200 donors that you manage the relationship with, it can quickly become something that becomes unmanageable just on our own. And that's really where I see automation and technology coming in as an exponent to help you scale that. But when we think about this, if you look at the math equation, the human piece is at the root of that. And automation is that exponent. And so if the human piece is at zero, it really doesn't matter how much automation we throw on top of that. A donor's going to see through that, and they're going to know there's no human relationship there. But if we start with that human piece and we use automation to help scale that, that's where we start to see the power of the technology in creating that connection at scale. And so I like to just talk through that before we start talking about these journeys, because as we go through them and talk about the different steps, one of the things that I'm going to reference is times when we think at DonorDock that this is a time where it's time for a human connection, picking up the phone, writing a handwritten note, something along those lines to really kind of anchor to that human piece. And in a world filled with automation and AI, what we're seeing is it's actually the human connection that starts to create value. People see that and they feel that. It's why in-person events are on such a rebound, because there's this human piece to that. And so we want to make sure to keep that kind of anchored, that thought anchored as we go through these journeys. And that's really the human equation as we see it at DonorDock.
Amazing. Matt, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. You're
Yeah,
doing so great.
yeah.
I think I lost your slides on the back end. So
Oh,
if you don't mind resharing, I'll get
yeah,
that.
absolutely. I would love to do that. Thank you for telling
Thanks.
me.
Of course.
Let's see here.
And I will let you take it away.
Yeah, and I'll so that's the human equation. Can you see that now, Candace? Perfect. So we're going to keep going here. So thank you for letting me know that. I do have slides. So prospect, first time, recurring, mid-level, major, and lapse. Those are those six journeys I talked about. And the slides will be part of this and the recording after. So the human equation, we want to anchor to that as we keep going through. And the first journey that we're going to talk about today is that prospect journey. So when I think about a prospect journey, this is a journey for someone who hasn't actually donated to your organization yet. And one of the first questions that I always get when we talk about prospect journeys is, should I put every contact in my database or my CRM into a prospect journey? And my answer to that is no. We don't typically want to, and really can't a lot of times, scale to put all of our contacts. Maybe we have 3,000 contacts in our database that haven't given to our organization before. And so we don't want to just enroll everyone into that prospect journey, because we know that journeys have a cost. They do take time, they do take resources. And if we just start pouring every kind of low probability name into that funnel, it's going to eat up that time. It's going to eat up resources and budget that could be really spent deepening relationships with our best candidates and drive down that return that we have. So we don't really want to put everybody into a prospect journey. So what are some of the things that might be indicative of a contact that does go in the prospect journey? What are some signals that we should be looking at when we are trying to decide who to put into these prospect journeys? So this is not an exhaustive list. This is just some ideas to help you as you're thinking through this. What are the signals? So things like responding to communications. If you have someone who hasn't given, that responds to an email that you send out, that's a great signal that they're engaged in some of the content that you're putting out. And they might be someone that would be a good example of someone to put or enroll in that prospect journey. Maybe it's someone who attended an event that you put on, but they've not given. That could be another really good signal. Or just someone who's actually expressed interest in your mission. Maybe you met them at some kind of networking event and they expressed interest. That would be another signal of someone to put into that prospect journey. If you've got the ability to track website interactions and be able to use that data within your CRM, that can be another great signal. Or social media engagement. And then maybe you have things like referrals or peer recommendations, or even people that have community reputation or influence that you know have an affinity to your cause. These might be people that would be worth putting into or enrolling in that prospect journey. So our goal here is to take our funnel of all of our contacts that haven't given and start to use these signals to identify who do we want to get into this prospect journey. Now we've enrolled someone in a prospect journey. What does a prospect journey even look like? Well, in DonorDock, we have these 6 core journeys that we're going to talk about pre-built for you, and they are out there. And I'm going to go through kind of the steps that we have. These are something that, of course, each organization can kind of tailor or make their own. But these are steps that we see based on best practices. These journeys run anywhere from a couple of months all the way out to a full year. But this prospect journey that we recommend is a 120-day journey from the time someone gets enrolled in that journey. The first day, our goal is just to try and make sure that we have as much information and as much data as we possibly can about this particular contact to enable us to engage with them throughout the journey. So day one for me is just making sure that I update my CRM with as much up-to-date information as I can that can help me as I navigate the donor through this journey. So that's my first step in the process. At day 7, we want to send them some kind of welcome emailer or mailer with really just low pressure engagement opportunities. Maybe it's as simple as sharing social. Maybe it's inviting them to respond to your email and let them know a little bit more let you know a little bit more about themselves. Some kind of low pressure way to engage. We're not looking for making a gift ask here. This is really introductory. It's trying to help them become aware of our mission and what we're trying to accomplish. And so that happens on day 7. Then we wait a bit. On day 45, now we're going to have a touch point around just more mission focused and nurturing that relationship. So maybe it's a deep dive into some content that you have and sharing that with them. Maybe it's just inviting them to be a part of your community in some way, shape, or form. And a light invitation to get more involved. Again, this is likely not a gift ask, but maybe it's an invitation to attend some kind of virtual event that you're having. Maybe it's an open house. Maybe you have a simple volunteer opportunity, something along those lines to help them get more engaged and become more involved with the organization. And then at day 60, this is where we're going to maybe do that first soft gift ask. So this is more of a personalized touch point. I would recommend here, if you can, pick up the phone and call them, introduce yourself in person, or send them some kind of handwritten note. Maybe it's something that you print out with some information and you add a handwritten note to the bottom, but something that helps them kind of understand the impact that a donation could provide to the organization and to those that you serve. And we're making that first soft gift ask at day 60. Now at day 120, this is just a gentle reminder, also an offer for other ways to engage. Again, if a financial donation isn't something that's on the table, again, maybe an opportunity to volunteer or work with the organization in some way, and some kind of a indication that we likely won't be reaching out again unless we hear back from them. Because what we don't want to do is, we always say like a quick no is honestly the second best thing to a yes that we can get, because frankly, we don't want to spend time and resources on a prospect who may not be interested in supporting the organization. And so we have this 120-day journey. One thing I like to always mention at the beginning here when we're talking about the first journey is that when you're building these journeys out, you want to build in short circuit conditions into your journeys. And what I mean by that is, let's say that we start this prospect journey and at day 14, this donor gives their first gift. Well, we want to short circuit and stop this prospect journey, because it's not going to make any sense for us to continue with this journey when honestly they're going to be moving into a different journey in their life cycle. And so I always like to point that out. We build those short circuits into the journeys in DonorDock, but you don't have to use DonorDock to be able to take advantage of this information. If you are using some kind of a different CRM that has a kind of workflow type processing, you could build these journeys out. Maybe you already have. Even if you're using Excel to manage your donor relationships, you could still do these types of things. I'm not going to lie, it would be harder, but you could still kind of keep track of the different touch points that you need to be having. But you always want to make sure that you're thinking about that short circuit condition. What might make it so that this journey no longer makes sense for me to run through with this donor? So something to keep in mind there. And so that's really that prospect journey. This is their first introduction to the organization and really the start of what we hope to be a long-term relationship with our organization. Now, the goal of this prospect journey is that this donor gives their first gift. And that would take us into that first time donor journey, which is really the next journey in the life cycle that we're looking at here across the donor's life cycle. So we get into that first time donor journey. And so what does that first time donor journey look like? So this is about a 2-month journey, 60-day journey. On day 1 is an automated thank you email with kind of your standard acknowledgement and receipt. But we think you should also follow that up with a personalized thank you and welcome. And that can happen in a couple of different ways. Again, if you have the capacity, I would always recommend, picking up the phone. Even if they don't answer, you can leave a voicemail and just welcoming them as a donor to your organization, making that first personal connection. At day 6, we want to do some kind of welcome email, as a donor. Share stories. I think one theme that you'll hear throughout a lot of these journeys is the power of telling compelling stories about how their donation is helping those that you serve. Those making those stories the hero of these communications, I think, can be really, really powerful. And we don't have to let perfect be the enemy of the good here. We can share quotes, testimonials from people that we serve. We can share, again, impact stories, even things like just unpolished video content can be extremely powerful in making that emotional connection with our donors. And so sharing that overview of the organization story, the vision, and the key programs and progress that you're making as an organization at day 6. At day 14, we want to have more impact focused content. So, again, recent success story, beneficiary, testimonial, and kind of a behind the scenes look at how you operate as an organization and how their donation is helping to further the mission. At day 30, this is when we're now a month out from that first gift. This is when we really recommend, again, more of a personalized touch point, something where it's all about sharing appreciation. Maybe it's an invitation if you've got an event that's coming up, or again, an opportunity that you think might be interesting to them to volunteer. Um, I look at this too and say, these are those perfect times when we are on the phone with someone or we're engaging with them, or maybe we're sending a personal email that we sit and write, but we're requesting feedback through this process as well. As we live in the world that we're in today, where we have AI tools and things that can help us engage better with our donors, kind of what we talked about with the human equation. A lot of times, if you think about over the last 30 years and having donor management and CRM tools, and we were often asked to do things like tracking notes and putting in activities, and sometimes that really felt like a lot of busy work, to be honest with you. It was, we were asked to be a historian of what was going on, and really trying to capture data that would benefit the organization, or if I leave and someone else comes in, that there's that history there, and there was certainly value to that. But as we sit today and we have all of these AI tools that are at our fingertips, all of a sudden that unstructured data of just like simple notes and like I had a quick call with this person and here's what I learned, those become gold when it comes time to engage again. And we can use AI to help us understand that relationship from all of that unstructured data. So as we go through these journeys and we have these personal touch points, I highly recommend that you're using that opportunity to ask for feedback. Why did you choose to give to the organization? What are the programs that you are most compelled to support that we're doing? What could we do better? And you capture that information to be useful for you later. So day 30 is really that personal touch point, appreciation, invitation to some kind of further engagement. And then now at day 60, so we're 2 months on, this is where it's time to ask for that second gift, or maybe even that they would consider some kind of a recurring donation. And we're going to anchor that to the impact that their gift has had for the organization, and make it easy for them to provide that second gift or that recurring gift. So, what's a one-click way within this communication that they can go and provide that second gift? And so we worked this one through that first 60 days. Again, I'll reiterate, if they were to give their second gift on day 30, we would want to short circuit this and not go and ask them for that second gift on day 60. So that's really that first time donor journey. Now, our hope here is that they continue to move through this donor life cycle, and ideally, they will give that second gift, or they might become a recurring donor with that second gift. And that may not happen at day 60. It may be 90 days later before they give that second gift or that recurring gift. But once that happens, let's say that is a recurring donation, that's when we would move them into our recurring donor journey. And so our recurring donor journey, this is actually a 12-month journey. So this spans the whole life cycle of that recurring gift over that first year. And so on day 1, again, we want to acknowledge that we received that gift. We want to talk about how recurring gifts create stability within our organization. I probably don't have to tell you the power of a good recurring gift program within an organization creates that kind of annuity based funding that's happening every month or every year. And there's a lot of stability that that creates. And then providing a tangible example. Each month, you help us do XYZ, whatever that looks like. And so that's our day one. At day 6, this is where I would recommend a personal outreach again. So, an email that you sit down and write, a phone call, maybe it's a text message. Um, One of the things that I like to do in these early journeys, again, is solicit feedback. Like, how do you want to hear from us in the future? And capture that information. If they say, I love getting a phone call, now we know when this pops up and it's time to, do this item on day 6, that we want to make a phone call. Maybe they say, you know what, I typically don't answer the phone, but send me a text message. Maybe that's how you want to do that with that particular donor. And that's where it's not a one size fits all with every donor. And the more data we can collect, the more we understand the relationship and can kind of tailor our engagement across the channels that are preferred by these donors. So we want to have that personal touch point at day 6. Then we're going to wait and we're going to do a month 3 check-in. So this is a check-in that basically says, here's what we've accomplished over the last few months with your support. You have an optional thing here of a personal connection that goes along with what I would see as more of an automated outreach. Now, I want to make sure to explain when I say automated, what I mean is we're going to have the system send this for us automatically, but we don't want this to necessarily be or look like a marketing email. We want this to be a personalized email that looks like it came from you as the fundraiser that's responsible for this relationship. And so, but in addition to that, at month 3, you have an option here to also still kind of make that connection, a text, invite them to coffee, send them a link where they can schedule 15 minutes with you just to kind of talk and tell you, give you feedback on how they see their gift being used and those types of things. And then we're going to do something similar at month 6 and at month 9. So the 6-month thank you email or check-in. And this might be a time now where we start to have kind of a gentle suggestion around maybe increasing that recurring gift amount. I would say in that scenario, you want to kind of look at the signals of the relationship. So are they engaging as you're going through this journey with you? And then taking that information and determining, is it a good time to kind of have that soft ask maybe for an additional, an amount or changing their amount, and then make that easy for them to do. So make it so that they can, click one place and go in and adjust that recurring giving if you're able to do that. And then at month 9, this is where I love being able to send that kind of exclusive content or event invitation again. And I'm not saying necessarily like a large scale event. Again, maybe it's just some kind of quarterly little recurring donor event that you do where it's a virtual event and you bring people in and you share updates of what's going on in the organization and you solicit feedback. But I do think that's a great way to connect. And then when we get to our 12-month anniversary that's where we're going to have that kind of thank you of that recurring gift. And maybe it was an annual gift. And so this is the recurring anniversary of that first time when they did that. Maybe it's a monthly gift and they've done 12, or maybe it's quarterly and there's been, 3 or 4 now through that. But here we want to have that, renewal or upgrade invitation. Hopefully the renewal is automatic and they just continue on. And I think here again, if you have the capacity, that personal call or a personal note can really go a long way in continuing to build and strengthen that relationship with that donor. So that's what the recurring donor, that's a 12-month journey, as we said. And I think that would be another one where something may happen in there where another journey might take precedence. So for example, we're going to talk about the mid-level donor journey next. And maybe during this, they give a gift that would move them into kind of that mid-level donor tier, in which case you may want to stop this journey automatically and start that next one. So just keep that in mind. I know I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but I do think it's important that we keep that in mind so that we don't end up sending something that doesn't make sense to a donor based on where they are currently within their life cycle. So that's our recurring donor journey. This is a really important journey. And I would definitely say if you don't have something in place, this is one that can be really, really powerful because it is such a stable funding source for your organization. The next journey that we're going to talk about today is the mid-level donor journey. So mid-level donor journey. I don't like the name mid-level donor, but I wanted to use something that was kind of generic across because, again, not every organization is the same. So first, before we talk about this, like let's just define what a mid-level donor is within an organization. So we see this as a supporter who either gives a single gift or maybe has a cumulative year-to-date giving that sits above your average, but below that major gift threshold. So in DonorDock, for example, out of the box, the mid-level donor journey starts if someone gives a gift of $250 or more. That can be edited, of course, for every organization. It could be changed to be kind of a cumulative annual giving. It could be a cumulative lifetime giving. So you've got to kind of define what you consider that mid-level donor. But typically we see that as, again, more than your average gift from a donor, but below what you would consider to be a major gift threshold. And this is a really important segment of your donor base. Typically, this is going to be somewhere probably in that, it's going to be that top 5 to 10% of all donors. And these are really strong candidates that may become major givers at some point. And so that's when we talk about a mid-level donor, that's really what we're talking about. I hate the name mid-level donor. Like I said, I don't think that's great. And I would certainly encourage you, if you don't have a mid-level donor program within your organization, to start to establish that and come up with some kind of name for it. So here's a few names that I've seen used in other places: Sustainer Circle, our Impact Partners, our Catalyst Society, or our Momentum Makers. Maybe you have something today. If you have a mid-level donor program within your organization today, feel free to share in the chat kind of if you have a name for that program, what you name it within your organization, to give other listeners and people on the webinar some ideas that they might be able to look at and to use as well. But I do recommend coming up with a name and then using that name when you communicate with your donors that are a part of this segment. So that's what a mid-level donor is. Let's talk about what that journey looks like. Again, this is another 12-month journey. So this spans an entire year. It starts with that kind of welcome email at that day one. Welcome to that segment. Again, this is where I would suggest using that name that you've given that segment of donors. Welcome to our Sustainers Circle, or whatever that name is. And we want to hear with this set of donors, if you're not the point of contact for them, we want to introduce that point of contact. If you are, we want to make sure that you're sharing a way for them to contact and connect with you. I always think the more we can talk with people, the more they buy into our mission and what we're doing. And so giving them a way to connect with you, I think, is really important in that first step of this mid-level donor journey. Then we're going to go to day 7. This is where I see, again, a perfect opportunity for that personal outreach, a short phone call, a handwritten letter, introducing yourself at a deeper level, sharing more about the mission, things that they probably already know, but just reinforcing how their gift and that mid-level donation is impacting those that you serve in such a positive way. Then we're going to wait now until month 2. And this is where we're going to reach out with a success story, a program update. Again, you'll hear me say it over and over again. Invite feedback, invite questions. Those are things that we can use to build that relationship out over the long term and can be really, really powerful. At month 4, invite them to some kind of special event or briefing. This is a segment where I believe having some kind of quarterly event for this segment of donors can be such a great thing for engagement. And again, it doesn't have to be some big event that takes a ton of time to plan or that costs a bunch of money. It can be as simple as a virtual connecting time where you can bring this segment in and talk about impact, gather feedback, talk about what's coming next for the organization. Maybe it's inviting this person to a coffee meeting where you spend a half an hour talking to them one-to-one. But having that kind of invitation to something unique to this segment of donors, I think can be great. Point out how their contributions are being used within your organization to make sure that you're making that connection of their impact. As we said earlier, our donors want to feel appreciated. They want to understand the impact that they're having. So we need to take every opportunity that we can to be able to provide that experience. At month 7, again, this is one where I would suggest more of a personal outreach. And this is maybe where we have a soft ask. Again, I would really feel this out based on the relationship and the engagement up to this point. But if you feel that there's an opportunity to make a soft ask for an upgrade, or maybe for them to become a recurring donor at a certain level, I think that's a great opportunity at month 7 to be able to kind of make that ask or make that suggestion. And then we have our kind of annual check-in at the year anniversary of that mid-level gift, where we're going to have more of that comprehensive, here's what we've accomplished over the last year. And we're going to anchor that in kind of that personal gratitude to this particular donor. So the mid-level donors, very important segment within the donor base. And this 12-month journey can help to make sure that you're engaging with them appropriately and consistently throughout that year after that gift. The next journey that we'll talk about, and hopefully one that gets that a mid-level donor becomes a major donor. And that major donor journey, this one is unique in how we think about it in DonorDock, because this is one where there's no automated emails. This is another 12-month journey, but it is all based on personal connection points with your major donor. We use a tool in DonorDock called the Action Board, where we have smart nudges that will show up every day to tell you who you need to connect with today based on the journeys that you have ongoing with different donors. And that's where these show up on the DonorDock system. And so if you're building this out in another system, you're going to want to make sure that you build in some kind of notification to yourself that, oh, today I need to reach out to donor XYZ because they're in day 7 of this major donor journey. And so let's talk through these steps for 12 months. So day 1, we're picking up the phone for this major donor and we are making a call. We are doing some kind of above and beyond a connection to them, a very heartfelt personal thank you, and then confirmation of next steps. Here's what they can expect. One of the beautiful parts of having these defined and consistent journeys is that we can tell donors what to expect. So we can start to set the expectation of the experience that they're going to have. And we know we're going to live up to that because we are following these consistent procedures around how we're engaging with donors. So day 1 it's really about that personal connection, making that phone call, thanking them for this major gift. And then we're doing it again at day 7. We're going to have a second wave thank you. Now, this might be something where you want to send them a handwritten note as a follow-up to that phone call that you had on day 1 a week earlier. I think that's a great way to connect, or maybe it's a personal text message that you're sending. And then this is an opportunity to introduce them to any other key contacts within your organization. Maybe there's a board member that would like to be a part of this relationship. Maybe it's somebody on your program team that wants to also reach out and just thank them for their gift. But making those introductions can be something that can be very helpful in continuing to build the relationship. Then we're going to go to month 2. This is where, again, personal outreach of some sort, sharing outcomes, short-term outcomes that have come from their major gift, inviting dialogue, inviting feedback, and or questions about how their gift is being used. These are all things that we want to be able to connect with them, answer, and get that feedback back. So we're gonna connect with them at month 2. We're going to do it again at month 6. Now we're going to have a detailed progress update on what's been going on in the last 6 months, how we've been able to leverage their major gift. And again, it's all about showing gratitude and letting them know this isn't transactional, this is relationship driven. And that's how we see the relationship with them. At month 9, maybe being able to invite them into some type of leadership or advisory role. Maybe you have exclusive opportunities for major givers, similar to what we talked about with major donors. Maybe it's a site tour of your organization and your site. Maybe it's being able to come and be a part of a day of programming, depending on the type of work that you're doing. But again, always a two-way exchange, asking for feedback, giving them space to share ideas. Major donors often enjoy being partners in what you're doing and helping solve problems, not just funding with dollars. So inviting that feedback, I think, can be really powerful for your organization and very, very helpful. And then we have our annual kind of check-in at the year anniversary of this major gift. And here maybe we start to talk about, again, depending on the relationship, start to talk about kind of legacy or plan giving opportunities if you think that that's a possibility with this particular major donor. But our goal here is just kind of that continuous feedback loop. We want to be connecting with them over the course of the full year in a consistent way. Again, you may in your organization do things like this a little bit differently. That's great. If you have a defined process, I think that's awesome. But if you don't, I think these can be really great starting points for you to go from 0 to 80 miles an hour very quickly, and get these things moving within your organization. And so we've talked about these first 5 up through that major donor journey. The other one I want to talk about today is the lapse donor journey. And the lapse donor journey is really, again, we have the reality that some donors will stop giving at times. In fact, if you look at statistics, about 60% in most organizations are not retained donors forever, right? Our typical retention is somewhere around that 40%, which means 60% are lapsing at some point. And so having a defined journey that we try and have consistency in re-engaging them as donors, getting a donor to give again typically is much less expensive than going out and trying to cultivate or find a new donor. So there's a lot of value in this lapse donor journey. This is another one that is about 120 days in how we define it in DonorDock. The first day one is just kind of that "we miss you" postcard or email. So warm and grateful tone for their previous support, updates around what's happening within the organization, and just low pressure opportunities to re-engage. Again, simple as sharing your social channels, maybe volunteering, something along those lines. At day 7, this is when I would recommend a personal touch point here, a personal note, a phone call, maybe a soft ask here to kind of bring them back into the fold as a donor, and emphasize urgency or opportunity of how their donation can impact and be supportive to your organization. Then we're going to do day 45. So we're going to wait a little bit here. If it's possible, again, maybe picking up the phone would be good. Otherwise, some kind of personalized email. And again, just trying to reconnect and reestablish, reignite that relationship with them. At day 60, now we're kind of getting in, if we haven't heard from them over these couple of months, we're going to let them know that this is kind of the final email they're going to hear from us on this subject. Offer non-monetary options to engage if a financial donation maybe isn't in the cards, and then a polite off ramp. We don't want to be high pressure. We just want to help inform them of how their continued donation or re-engaging, reactivating as a donor can be helpful, but give them that polite off ramp to know that we're not going to continue to reach out, if we don't hear from them. And then if it goes for another 60 days and we haven't heard from them, that's when we're going to go in and maybe label them as inactive, or however you would label that. Do not solicit if they've requested that, however you would label that, in your CRM, but then be ready to reactivate. We may find that while we don't continue to send more things after that day 60, they come back, 180 days later and they give again and they're reactivated, in which case, they may be into a different journey at that point. So, but having the consistency around how we're handling these lapsed donors can really save our organization a lot of money in retaining them, reactivating them, versus having to go out and find new donors. So those, I know that's a lot. We're going to share all of this content after, but those are kind of the 6 core journeys that we feel are just fundamental and foundational to good donor engagement. And so we would take these journeys. Our process now would be, we would map these into our CRM processes. So touch point automation, workflows that need to be happening, and then the communication cadences that go along with that. Again, at DonorDock, we have pre-built those 6 donor journeys for you. So you can just turn them on and use them, or edit them to fit your own process. And if you're in some other system, you define these out and then you go map those into your CRM so that you can start to execute on these on a consistent basis. And we've seen these be very, very powerful in helping create that consistency and ensure that our donors' expectations are being matched with the experience that we're able to provide, that we move from transactional to relational, and use the technology to help us scale that. So we do have an article out on our website about these 6 journeys. There is a link there as well. But I want to open it up. I think we have about 10 minutes here to just answer questions, if there are any questions that people have.
Matt, thank you so much for this session. I was taking notes. I know all of this was so helpful. I think like you've really opened the world up, I think, for a few of us here today, because with so many different journeys and ways that you can move people along, this will really help to maximize revenue and impact. And so just so thankful for you being here and sharing all of this. If anyone is interested in learning more about how DonorDock can make fundraising feel doable, again, you can go ahead and book some time to chat with the DonorDock team, get a view of everything that's built into their incredible platform, including these journeys that we just went over. And so I just want to, celebrate you. There's been tons of thank yous already in the chat. Let's keep it going for Matt. And I'd love for us to get to a few questions in our time here. So, saw a lot of great questions come in already. The first one up, top rated already, says, I've heard that first time donor journey is typically a full calendar year. Have you seen a major difference or impact in focusing on 60 days versus 365? And that's from Ricky.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Ricky. So as we've looked at just kind of what we've seen be successful, I think that 60 days, it sort of compresses it, but our goal at the end of that 60 days is that we are actually trying to kind of move them along in their life cycle into being a recurring or, kind of that second time donor. And so, um, w- I think the longer something goes on, at times we start to lose kind of the connection that we have right after. There's momentum after that first gift, and we want to tap into that momentum. And so we've seen that 60 days can be a really good timeline for that first time gift, again, with the goal of trying to kind of move them through that life cycle. But again, there is the beauty of these things is that they can really be tailored to your organization and to kind of how you see the relationships with your own donors. And if you find that 365 days works, then you can kind of build it out to that. I think the key is having consistency in what you're doing. And part of the 60-day timeline is that we have seen, especially small to mid-size organizations, which is who we work mostly with, that the capacity to do that for the whole year on that first time donor can sometimes be a challenge. Whereas if we can press that into that 60 days, not only are we taking advantage of the momentum, but often those smaller organizations are able to manage that just a little bit better.
Amazing. Thanks, Matt. There's a lot of great questions in here. Fernanda asked, in terms of touch points and ways to communicate, what's the difference between recurring donors and mid-level donors?
Yeah. So as we kind of defined in there, so I see both of those segments as being really, really important segments within your nonprofit. Again, the recurring side, you've got that stable base of revenue that's coming in. The mid-level, those are ones that are giving more than an average donor and can be really powerful people that you might want to cultivate that relationship with. And so while the journeys that we've defined, they're not exactly the same. There are some commonalities within that where you see, like, across both of those journeys, that we're kind of having both an automated piece where some of those things are going out as kind of automated personalized emails, again looking like they're coming from you, they like you sat down and wrote them, versus those nudges where it's time to make a connection with somebody. They're actually at a little bit different times across those two journeys. And that's just based on, our research and kind of what we've seen uh, work well. And also, so that as we're kind of defining and building these journeys, there's some variance in, like, if I become a recurring donor, then I become a mid-level donor. It doesn't feel like those two things are exactly the same as a donor. Like, there's some variance in how they're being engaged with. But I think in both cases, a combination of some automation, but then, having those key, like picking up the phone in the midst of that, that's really where we've seen kind of the sweet spot with how those things work best.
Amazing. Thanks, Matt. And there's a lot of really great questions. Like I mentioned, Eleanor asked, I think this is a great question. What should be a click-through rate engagement goal for the content that we send? So I guess like any KPIs about those engagement markers that are, reasonable for beginning this whole process, and what should they work towards?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends a little bit on where you're coming from and like what do you already have in place? Like, how strong are the relationships you have with donors today within your organization? I was doing a webinar yesterday, and a similar question came up. And the way I look at this, so our goal with these is certainly that we want to have higher engagement rates than we would say with our bulk email, newsletters and things like that we're sending out. And the reason for that is because these journeys and even the automated pieces to these journeys, they need to be built and designed to feel like we've talked about, very personalized. Somebody sat down and wrote that, and we see the engagement on those types of emails typically to be higher. Now, I don't have any um, I don't have any numbers like sitting in front of me. I should have brought some of those with me. I didn't think about it, but that's something we can maybe follow up with after with the listeners. But we want a fairly high engagement on these, and that's why I think having those different touch points and always being asking for feedback in these things, like you just reply to this email and let me know like kind of what drove you to give today. Like those are the kinds of things that we've seen drive those engagement rates up, because we're trying to make it a two-way conversation. This isn't just us as an organization sending you a blast email. We're really trying to make these journeys a two-way street of communication, and that typically leads to higher engagement than what we would see otherwise.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I think you set everything up so well to really like show like what could this journey look like to get someone from their current place, their current journey into the next portion. But there was a couple of questions about like, okay, so like we have this like let's say mid-level donor or whatever journey that they're on. Now they are one. What does ongoing communication look like? Is it weekly? Is it how do you keep them engaged? And so there was a couple questions around that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
this was
So I think that, so we get this question a lot, like what's the difference between the journeys and then like our normal, marketing communications that are going out, and should I be doing one versus the other? And we really look at that as kind of like a both and, like these journeys don't replace your normal marketing content. What we hope is that it might reach people who have, say, opted out of your marketing content, but they're these trend, these more personalized things. They're engaging with those. Um, Personally, again, you know, I think we likely people have different opinions on this. Once a week feels like a lot to me to be talking to your, to be doing like marketing emails to your whole database. But I think the journeys to me are an addition to your normal marketing things. They're not like a replacement or something that would stop you from doing that, because again, these are really specific to an individual donor and like where they are in their relationship with your organization based on kind of whatever triggered them to get into the journey that they're in.
amazing. Thanks, Matt. I know we're over time, I realize, but I have one really good question that is left for you. So, if you don't mind hanging out for another minute, we have Eleanor asked, as a new development director, I'm a bit overwhelmed by the numerous CRMs and tools available for fundraising. With a limited budget, do you have any suggestions for how to evaluate and what would be most beneficial for an organization like theirs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it is overwhelming. I'm going to just validate that feeling. There is a lot of options out there. And in a lot of cases, there are so many tools that can check a lot of different boxes for you. And so, I think there's a few things that I would think about when I was looking at this. First off, I would sit down and I would, so we have our smart steward method actually that I touched on at the very beginning. And part of that is our three E's, which is the evaluate step, the establish step, and the execute step. And really what the evaluate step is exactly this question that's being asked here. It's basically going through a process where you say, where are we really at as an organization when it comes to these various things? And where are there gaps in what we're doing from a process or an operational standpoint in terms of how we're using technology, how we are engaging with donors? And then that leads you into your established step, which is, okay, we really know where we're at now. Let's start to make a plan for how we move this forward. And part of that in the established step is saying, what do we really need for technology to do these things? And I would really encourage you to think about what we said again at the beginning of the webinar, which, like, you don't need a system that will help you do everything. You need a system that will help you focus on the most important things and get those done every single day. And so figure out what those are for your organization and then start to evaluate solutions that you think can help you do those things and do them well. And you're going to have options around all-in-one packages that say they can do everything under the sun versus solutions that might be something that does something really well and maybe integrates with another tool that does something really well. So you got multiple ways that you can go. But selfishly speaking, do a demo with DonorDock. Let us show you kind of how we help you focus on the most important things every day, and see if that's something that might fit, because we do have tiers at lots of different different levels from a price standpoint. So but yeah, just to validate, it can be an overwhelming experience, but I think we do have our like a questionnaire or thing on our website for that first evaluate step that you could actually do, and it's not something that is unique to DonorDock. It's just a set of questions to help you really understand where you're at as an organization, and the outcome of that is, or the output of that is, kind of an overview of like, here's where you are, here's some things that you should be thinking about as you're trying to kind of move this process forward. So I would certainly say, check that out if you'd like to kind of have some help with that evaluate step.
Amazing. Matt, this was so great. There was a lot more questions. I'll even send you the questions so you can follow up with people individually asking,
Mhm. Perfect.
things that are more specific of like what this looks like in DonorDoc. So for those of you who are curious, again, just highly recommend booking that demo so that you can see what this looks like in action and see if this could be a great fit for your organization. But in any case, this whole webinar was so informative. Thank you so much, Matt, again, for being here and spending your time hanging out with us a few extra minutes. And just thank you to everyone who spent the afternoon with us today. There's so many things you could be doing. I'm very, very grateful that you were here with us. So let's please just give a big round of applause, some hands clapping in those reactions, and thank yous in the chat. We'll send everything over to Matt afterwards. And just so excited to share this webinar with you guys today. So, like I said earlier, we're gonna send out the recording tomorrow. We'll send out the slides. We'll send out a few of those resources that we chatted about. And yeah, Matt, thanks again. Any last final thoughts before we
Just
end our time today?
just ending with gratitude for everyone for joining us and taking the time. Candace, thank you for inviting me to do this and for hosting. And for those of you who are close to the Minneapolis area, I'll be down with Candace at that Minneapolis event. So come see us in person there.
Amazing. I'll paste the link in the chat and I'll put in the follow-up email tomorrow too. If anyone wants to come and meet us in person, we would love to see you. Thank you again, Matt. And yeah, we'll send out the recording and all the details. And this was so great having you back.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care, everybody.